Live.
And welcome back. I know it's been a couple of days. So I finally got internet. I am Old New Dude, and my co-host is
Richard York, Asher's trueborn son.
uh, just Monday, Wednesday was just I hated it. Over a week without internet sucked. But I'm glad we're back. And Sansa 2, it's got some stuff in there. It's not a long chapter, and as is normal, the brains of the Operation Richard will start letting you know what he's seen in the chapter, and then I'll just jump in with my stupid stuff every now and then. So take it away, Richard.
Thank you, sir. Sansa rode to the hand's tourney with Septim Mordain and Jane Poole, in a litter with curtains of yellow silk so fine she could see right through them. They turned the whole world gold. Beyond the city walls, 100 pavilions had been raised beside the river, and the common folk came out in the thousands to watch the games. The splendor of it all took Sansa's breath away. The shining armor, the great chargers caparisoned in silver and gold, the shouts of the crowd, the banners snapping in the wind, and the knights themselves, the knights most of all. "It is better than the songs," she whispered, when they found the places that her father had promised her among the high lords and ladies. So, yes, Sansa is naive until Ned loses his head, but her chapters are pretty great.
Yeah.
And I think the best character arcs are those that start weak and grow, and Sansa's intended to rival Jaime and Theon by the time the series completes, in my opinion.
Right. Well, I mean, even earlier today, I forget who it was. We were talking about the Sansa hate. I think they added to something you had said.
Yeah, they've been retweeting my February tweet.
Yeah, I know. I was like, dang, man, that's cool. But we were talking, and I'm like, how dare this 11-year-old child not act more responsible? And then I also said, even taking John at 14, 15, me at 14, 15, I would have fumbled. I'd have fell flat on my face. I'd have gone into a corner crying. I mean, we as the reader, and I'll say we, are expecting way too much from children.
I've never quite gotten gotten wholly on board with the idea that Sansa and the family and the servants could have all escaped if she hadn't gone to Cersei. I don't know, man. The timing sure seems like Ned may have waited too long already when he finally gave those orders.
Yeah.
And I just don't know that they would have necessarily made it out. I think the timing was more about Robert dying than it was about Sansa going to Cersei. I don't know. Maybe it's a counterfactual. You'll never really know what would have happened. But
Yeah.
I've never quite fully embraced that hatred of Sansa over that event. And I did kind of make a joke about it because. But it might even be a quote in this one. I can't remember, but there was a quote that kind of reminded me of that reminded me of the whatever you do, don't. Oh, it's the end of this chapter, actually. Yeah, it is the end of this chapter.
Yeah. Don't tell Santa.
Yeah, don't tell Santa. Anyway,
Well, I
been a
mean,
while.
if I had to blame one start for all the crap that happens, I blame even though I love him and I say he plays the game better than we think he does, but I blame Ned.
I mean, you could say Catelyn. I mean, as much as I defend her for sending Ned's orders and stuff, she makes a whole lot of mistakes. And like we talked about in the previous chapter, it's the one where people are choosing war and it feels epic, and that's sort of what George does, right? He makes these stirring moments where the person gives a speech and they choose war, whether that's John forsaking his vow and getting himself stabbed, the King in the North moment, the seizing of Tyrion. These are moments when people are basically choosing war, and we're in their heads, and and with them or the people around them. We're seeing how epic that decision is, how it feels like it's the right thing to do, and how it has really bad consequences.
Right. And I know I've mentioned it before, and other people have without a doubt, the hidden fingers. Like I said, what I said, I know we disagree on this, but I say the Three-Eyed Crow taught Littlefinger how to play the Game of Thrones. And once you know what a person desires, you know how to move them. And I mean, even rereading some of this stuff and thinking about what's going to happen, we get a strong sense of the story that Ned does not like the hurting or the innocent child is a pet peeve. And we don't know if those little hidden fingers going, oh, Ned's going to want to protect kids. Let's make him go talk to Cersei and try to protect those kids and end up messing himself up. I mean, that's out there. It's really thin. I know. I get yelled at about it, but I mean, you never know.
Well, I do think it just sort of fits. Some of these things just sort of fit the personality of the person too. So they may not require any manipulation.
Not a problem. I told you.
I'm not saying they don't. I'm just saying, I mean, we don't know what's been tried and what hasn't been tried by these great chess players, whether that's Bran versus some Azor Ahai or whatever.
Yeah. All right, go ahead.
Yep. Sir Gregor Clegane, the mountain that rides, thundered past. Oh wait, there's one other thing I wanted to mention here that I just sort of thought of while we were reading.
Uh-huh.
And I think I actually have heard other people analyze this. The concept of rose-colored glasses, they kind of are. The whole world is turning golden around them.
Right.
And that's part of me saying, Sansa is a little naive until Ned loses his head.
Well, I mean, she saw a little bit of the curtain getting pulled away at the at the crossroads with Joffrey and Lady and everything, and then she's choosing to close that curtain again because this is like everything she's ever dreamed of.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that a little more when we get to Joffrey too, right?
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No. I'm just saying it's a great observation. I thought about mentioning it here too, but let's talk about that here in a second.
Okay.
So Gregor Clegane, the mountain that rides, thundered past them like an avalanche. Sansa remembered Lord John Royce, who had guested at Winterfell 2 years before. His armor is bronze, thousands and thousands of years old, engraved with magic runes that ward him against harm, she whispered to Jane. Septa Mordane pointed out Lord Jason Mallister, in indigo chased with silver, the wings of an eagle on his helm. He had cut down 3 of Rhaegar's bannermen on the Trident. The girls giggled over the warrior priest Thoros of Myr in his flapping red robes and shaven head, until the Septa told them that he had once scaled the walls of Pike with a flaming sword in hand. So John Royce might recognize Sansa later and choose to keep quiet.
Yeah.
Jason Mallister knows Catelyn well, but could not recognize her. So that's sort of the same spirit, right?
Yeah.
Thoros is one of the best jousters, and he'll win the melee despite whatever fatigue is going very deep in the jousting might involve. Especially when you consider he seems to be somewhat of an out of shape individual, at least currently. Now, later on, he's not going to be. He's going to be in better shape. He's going to have real magic. He's going to be summoning. His magic's going to be summoning real flaming swords. Thoros could be a real force.
I agree, and I worry how much of himself did he put into resurrecting Beric? Because is it Preston Jacobs did a really good video on the life fire. When the person dies, you bring them back, but you can only bring them back about 90%, but it takes 10% of your life force.
Yeah, and people speculate that the point of Jon being a warg and being in Ghost when he dies might be to avoid that loss of personality that other people are having and so forth.
Yeah, but you got Thoros of Myr. We see Sam that's in really hard conditions north of the wall, the haunted forest, Crasher's Keep, on the run back to the wall, and he hasn't lost a pound.
He mentions that he does, actually.
Well, I mean, not compared to what Thoros is shrunk down to.
Oh, yeah.
For sure, but I mean,
yeah,
we'll see when it comes. But yeah, I do believe that he's still got a big part to play.
Yeah, there's actually in Clash, Davos thinks about actually in the next chapter, Ned's going to think about how Thoros has won lots of melees apparently, but in Clash, Davos says a year ago he'd been with Stannis in King's Landing when King Robert staged a tourney for Prince Joffrey's name day. He remembered the Red Priest Thoros of Myr and the flaming sword he had wielded in the melee. The man had made for a colorful spectacle, his red robes flapping while his blade writhed with pale green flames, but everyone knew there was no true magic to it, and in the end his fire had guttered out, and Bronzeon Royce had brained him with a common mace. So Thoros actually does win melees, but sometimes his fire doesn't last long enough, and he's an easy target.
I know it's not in this chapter, and it's a bit further on, but what color flame does Beric, or even if we see Thoros do it again later in the story after?
I don't know if it's mentioned.
That's right.
I would assume kind of a reddish flame from his blood, right?
Right. I'm assuming that, okay, we know the green flame is the dragonfire, wildfire that the pyromancers are making in East.
Right.
But if later on, once he does the reawakening, when he has real magic, is the flames on the sword no longer green flame, but actually true, like life fire flames, the actual color of flames instead of the cheap trick that he did.
Yeah. I think it's more natural flame, and it might be reddish flame.
Okay.
Because it's not mentioned, right? And I feel like you'd mention it otherwise, right?
Well, the Arya chapter where Beric goes up against the Hound will probably be our best chance.
Yeah.
To figure out what color flame he has on that sword.
Yeah, I'm guessing it'll be red, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Jory's armor was blue-gray plate without device or ornament, and a thin gray cloak hung from his shoulders like a soiled rag. Yet he acquitted himself well, unhorsing Horace Redwine in his first joust and one of the Freys in his second. In his third match, he rode 3 passes at a free rider named Lothar Brune, whose armor was as drab as his own. Neither man lost his seat, but Brune's lance was steadier and his blows were better placed, and the king gave him the victory. Alan and Harwin fared less well. Harwin was unhorsed in his first tilt by Sir Meryn of the King's Guard, while Alan fell to Sir Balon Swan. So Jory won a few jousts and virtually tied Lothar Brune, though it was ruled a loss. We will follow up on who finally defeats Brune, so stick a pin in this for just a few minutes. First, some interesting symbolism that LML often cites. His armor was shiny new. A bright streak of fire ran down his outstretched arm as the steel caught the light. Then the sun went behind a cloud, and it was gone. His cloak was blue, the color of the sky on a clear summer's day, trimmed with a border of crescent moons. But as his blood seeped into it, the cloth darkened and the moons turned red, one by one. Fire down an outstretched arm sounds like meteors breaking the arm of Dorne.
Right.
The sun was gone, which sounds like the long night. His cloak was a clear summer's day, but the moons turned red. Sounds like a lunar eclipse with a blood moon, right?
Right.
So we have a blood sacrifice. We have altering the moon. We have the meteors of the arm of Dorne. We have an eclipse of a sort. We have the sun gone. So LML, I think we can see it.
Oh yeah. It's not a big stretch to see it either.
Yeah.
As bad as I am when it comes to reading and foreshadowing and all that stuff that goes along, that everybody else knows a whole lot more than I did, apparently, because I didn't pay attention in school for sure on that. Even I can see that. So
Yep. Sir Aaron fell afterward to Lord Jason Mallister, and Brune to Jon Royce's younger son Robar. So we're back to Lothar Brune here to see what happened to him.
Well, I mean, this to talk about. I mean, even Sansa even talks about outriders, hedge knights from the Fingers in Highgarden and the Mountains of Dorne. The hedge knights from the Fingers, I'm assuming is Uther, but there's several of them, and I'm going to go ahead and guess that Jory isn't no sap when it comes to jousting. I mean,
right?
Anyone trained by Sir Roderick, you got John. I mean, all of them have got to be top notch.
Yeah. At first, it seems weird that Harwin lost, right? But
Yeah,
but he lost. He lost to one of the very best, right?
right.
And
And both the other ones lost to a Kingsguard. I mean,
or a soon-to-be Kingsguard and a Kingsguard.
right,
Yep.
right, 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 right. But I mean, Luther is a badass. So
Yep. Yep. So this, yes, those are three losses, but they're three losses to really good people, and one of them's basically a tie, right? And
right.
so, but one of the interesting things is let's go ahead and walk through this. I'll just read my notes because
Okay.
this is always fun to. This is one of my favorite parallels here. So Jory had some victories and almost defeated Brune, and Robar Royce also had some victories and did defeat Brune. The deaths of these two are very similar. When the Kingslayer has the man he loves taken from him, he kills innocent guards. Jory dies protecting the father of the king in the north. When Loras has the man he loves taken from him, he kills innocent guards. Robar Royce dies protecting the mother of the king in the north. This was one of many parallels, frequently with a gender flip, of the Kingslayer and the only little member of the Kingsguard, who I like to call the Queenslayer, the little Kingsguard, or the little brother. For more on these parallels, see Triplet Targaryens, episode 6.
You wouldn't self-motivate, would you? Or what's what I'm looking for?
Self-promote.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. I'm having a day. Me and words aren't doing too well. That's pretty good.
Yes, we've discussed how incredibly close I am to the necessary 1,000 subscribers to monetize your videos, and how the money will be rolling in any minute.
Any minute. Yeah. Oh, kind of on that subject. David Lightbringer had made another. I think it was before one of his videos, either 2 days ago, I think. And I've been giving him a little bit of a hard time. Like I want to be the +1 instead of 1. I did OND because old new dude does up on everyone that's generally on his live streams and stuff like that. Instead of calling me old new dude, it's just OND. So I like it. But it was yesterday, the day before. I'm like, man, because I looked it up. He's got 52.5 thousand subscribers, and I'm like, there are 52.5 thousand people that are jealous of you. I hope you have a good time. And I apparently think that maybe the HBO didn't go by the subscriber number on who they asked to go to the premiere. It was done alphabetically, and they just ran out of seats before they got to the O. Sorry.
No problem. Speaking of Loras killing Robar, here comes some foreshadowing, somewhat overshadowed by the rose. His last match of the day was against the younger Royce. Sir Robar's ancestral runes proved small protection as Sir Loras split his shield and drove him from his saddle to crash with an awful clangor in the dirt. Robar lay moaning as the victor made his circuit of the field. Finally, they called for a litter and carried him off to his tent, dazed and unmoving. Sansa never saw it. Her eyes were only for Sir Loras. When the white horse stopped in front of her, she thought her heart would burst. To the other maidens, he had given white roses, but the one he plucked for her was red. "Sweet lady," he said, "no victory is half so beautiful as you." Sansa took the flower timidly, struck dumb by his gallantry. His hair was a mass of lazy brown curls, his eyes like liquid gold. She inhaled the sweet fragrance of the rose and sat clutching it long after Sir Loras had ridden off. When Sansa finally looked up, a man was standing over her, staring. He was short, with a pointed beard and a silver streak in his hair, almost as old as her father. "You must be one of her daughters," he said to her. He had gray-green eyes that did not smile when his mouth did. "You have the Tully look." "I'm Sansa Stark," she said, ill at ease. The man wore a heavy cloak with a fur collar fastened with a silver mockingbird, and he had the effortless manner of a high lord, but she did not know him. "I've not had the honor, my lord." Septim Ordain quickly took a hand. "Sweet child, this is Lord Peter Baelish of the King's Small Council." "Your mother was my queen of beauty once," the man said quietly. His breath smelled of mint. "You have her hair. His fingers brushed against her cheek as he stroked one auburn lock. Quite abruptly, he turned and walked away. So Sansa being overwhelmed by the gallant knight is an echo of her Aunt Lyanna, with Littlefinger even comparing this to a naming of a queen of beauty. Littlefinger's strange behavior and abrupt departure has some people wondering, and I think including Preston, if there might be some prophecy about this event. So I think Preston is the first place I heard that idea.
I haven't heard it.
Anyway, it's an interesting concept that something about that event seems to have really struck Littlefinger, and maybe he thought it matched some prophecy.
Okay.
When Prince Joffrey seated himself to her right, she felt her throat tighten. He had not spoken a word to her since the awful thing had happened, and she had not dared to speak to him. At first, she thought she hated him for what they'd done to Lady, but after Sansa had wept her eyes dry, she told herself that it had not been Joffrey's doing. Not truly. The Queen had done it. She was the one to hate. Her and Arya. Nothing bad would have happened except for Arya. She could not hate Joffrey tonight. He was too beautiful to hate. So Sansa's definitely misplaced the blame, but she's a little girl trying to make a bad arranged marriage work.
Yeah. I mean,
that's what we were talking about.
Yeah, she's definitely trying to shut that curtain by any means possible. I mean, she's 11, right? I mean, like I said, people are just expecting way too much. And she is trying to maintain the fantasy that she's always had in her head of King's Landing, of the South, of the Prince. I mean, well, I don't blame her one bit. I mean, that's for sure.
Later on, in an Arya chapter, I think we're going to see, maybe we've already have, I don't think we have, we're going to see Ned say that maybe we did, I can't remember, that, you know, what do you expect, right? Like, yeah, we were asking too much of her to speak the truth in that scenario. The one family that's more powerful than her family has arranged a marriage with her.
Right.
Like, she feels obligated to try and make that work. And part of that is her head trying to embrace her husband. Right.
That's the chapter where Ned finds her with Needle and she's talking and
yeah, we did do it. Yep.
Yeah,
we have passed that.
Yes.
Sir Loras is a true knight. Do you think he will win tomorrow, my lord? No, Joffrey said. My dog will do for him, or perhaps my Uncle Jaime. And in a few years, when I'm old enough to enter the lists, I shall do for them all. So, while Joffrey has narcissistic delusions like his mother and her father, his judgment implies the Hound will probably win, with Gregor the least likely of the four. It's a very good read on everyone's talents, except for his own.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we see a lot of this with I mean, we keep talking about these people. He's what, 13? That's like when Littlefinger came up and she describes that his eyes weren't smiling with him. I mean, that's noticing a lot of details that we in our everyday life wouldn't pay any attention to. So a lot of the kids in this, and I'm going to say kids because that's where they are. I mean, they're smarter than I would have been, or most people I know would have been. I mean, they're pretty quick on sensing things and talents and what people mean. I mean, they're pretty good at it.
Yep. The king's own fool, the pie-faced simpleton called Moon Boy, danced about on stilts, all in motley, making mock of everyone with such deft cruelty that Sansa wondered if he was simple after all. Even Septim Ordain was helpless before him when he sang his little song about the High Septon. She laughed so hard she spilled wine on herself. And Joffrey was the soul of courtesy. He talked to Sansa all night, showering her with compliments, making her laugh, sharing little bits of court gossip, explaining Moon Boy's japes. So if your fool's japes require explanation, he's not simple. Sansa is onto something here.
Oh, yes.
Moon Boy has convinced everybody that he's a moron. He's not a moron. And this is a callback to Fire and Blood. So Fire and Blood, I know you've never read Fire and Blood.
That's okay.
Fire and Blood is a history book telling the story from three different perspectives. And one of those is a fool who supposedly was in a position to know things because everybody thought he was a simpleton.
Right.
And he wasn't. He was probably the smartest person in the room at the time, right? So, right. In fact, it doesn't actually make much sense because people seem to agree that Rhaenyra actually considered him to be her one of her primary advisors and one of the smartest people around, basically. So she didn't think he was a simpleton. Now, whether she saw through the act or what, I don't know. But
yeah.
Anyway,
there's definitely conversations that are going to be happening around Moon Boy because people don't. He ain't gonna get it. He ain't gonna know who we're talking about. Blah blah blah. So he probably knows.
Yeah.
90% of what Littlefinger and
yeah, you have to wonder if that's going to come back at some point, right?
Yeah.
The queen's face was a mask, so bloodless that it might have been sculpted from snow. She rose from the table, gathered her skirts around her, and stormed off in silence, servants trailing behind. Jaime Lannister put a hand on the king's shoulder, but the king shoved him away hard. Lannister stumbled and fell. The king guffawed. The great knight! I can still knock you in the dirt. Remember that, King Slayer. He slapped his chest with the jeweled goblet, splashing wine all over his satin tunic. Give me my hammer, and not a man in the realm can stand before me. Jaime Lannister rose and brushed himself off. As you say, your grace. His voice was stiff. Lord Renly came forward, smiling. You spilled your wine, Robert. Let me bring you a fresh goblet. Sansa started as Joffrey laid his hand on her arm. It grows late, the prince said. He had a queer look on his face, as if he were not seeing her at all. Do you need an escort back to the castle? So I wonder if Joff maybe goes away inside when his parents fight, and that's the reason for his queer look.
Right.
It seems like it's he can't process when his parents are fighting. Maybe I don't know. I'm just speculating.
Yeah. I mean, I agree 100%.
There's also some nice Ice Queen symbolism around Cersei there.
Oh yes.
Sandor Clegane seemed to take form out of the night. So quickly did he appear. He had exchanged his armor for a red woolen tunic with a leather dog's head sewn on the front. The light of the torches made his burned face shine a dull red. The others are implied to be a mist that takes form at night with magic that only works at night. The Kingsguard, including Sandor, are often symbolically portrayed as the others. And the red face might be sort of tying the others to the Weirwood, maybe? I'm just kind of speculating on that one.
Yeah.
Do you have any ideas about the red face?
When I think of any face in this story, I think of the gate under the wall. I think of the doors at the House of Black and White. I think of that large Weirwood that John looks inside, and there's like child bones in there and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So any time that there's any reference to a face, I just automatically get.
Yeah, and if it's a red face, it almost has to be referencing a Weirwood, doesn't it?
I would think so. Yeah. The only other thing that the red might symbolize would involve Dorne, and that's too big of a leap.
Or maybe the velour and the red magic and stuff, right?
Right. And that's a really, really big stretch. The Weirwood faces fit really good with that image.
Yeah, and it does seem to be certainly tying him to the others, so that seems the most direct link would be the Weirwood.
Well, I mean, he wouldn't make all the other Kingsguard similar or references and all that kind of stuff to the others, and then take Sandor Clegane and do something different with him. It's going to be the same thing. So
yeah, of course, I think that's a hint that they tend to die and come back, right? And Sandor will do that.
Yes.
So, well, we assume he's coming back, right? He dies in the third book, and we have hints that he might be. We have hints in the fourth book that he might still be around.
Yeah, and I put that in a tweet the other day, and I got kind of side looks. It was like, okay, the people like the theory that was it Toodles with the Chadwick, the Mad Mouse, and everything.
Yeah, Blue Lemon says the same theory. She doesn't buy the elder brother. She thinks that's a little too tinfoily, but she definitely thinks she doesn't buy that the elder brother is an old Kingsguard, even though I think his name says I'm the old Kingsguard, but whatever.
Yeah.
So she's a little speculative. She's a little No, she's not bought on that. Now, I think part of the shrewd eyes symbolism is that they are the old Kingsguard, and his name says the old Kingsguard. So,
Oh yeah,
and I think there's a lot of hints that his brother's story doesn't add up, and he's somebody who famously died on the Trident. I mean, there's a whole lot of things that seem to imply that he is Lewin Martell, right?
right. You've sold me 100% on the Shadrick and Martell and the Hound, and they said, oh, it's a lovely theory. I wish it would be. I mean, kissing her hand, it'd be great for Sansa to happen and all that kind of stuff. But they like it's pretty good stretch. I'm like, okay. I mean, I ain't gonna force my opinion, but
I think the Blue Lemon's explanation is basically that we're sort of told that that assuming you buy the Shadrick theory, which I certainly do,
Yeah.
we're sort of told that Howland knows magic.
yes,
And we know that they have rubies. If you had a guy who knew magic with rubies, wouldn't you want somebody who could recognize Sansa coming with you?
Right.
Who's the one that would recognize Sansa? Well, that's Gregor. I mean, sorry, Gregor Sandor.
Yeah.
He's the only one that would recognize her. So you need to bring him.
Right. Even if her the hair is dyed and nobody recognizes her. I mean, Roose doesn't recognize her. Sandor's going to recognize her. She could do her hair in a mohawk and put mud on her face. He'd still know her.
So they need somebody who's going to be able to recognize her, and so that makes sense that they would bring somebody. So I do think it makes sense once you realize, no, Howland knows magic. They have rubies. It does make sense.
I always wonder if it has to be a certain kind of ruby. Just the standard ruby wouldn't work. It has to be something that had a magical ruby to begin with type situation. So the rubies
we're moving on this. We're already at half past, and
sorry. It's been a week, man. I got
time today. My dogs are at the groomer, so I can spend a little extra time here. But anyway,
sorry.
No problem. I may need to kill my brother tomorrow. So he will fight honorably against his helmetless foe. He could have probably gotten away with killing his brother, if not for his own honor. You rode gallantly today, Sir Sandor, she made herself say. Sandor Clegane snarled at her. Spare me your empty little compliments, girl, and your sirs. I am no knight. I spit on them in their bows. My brother is a knight. Did you see him ride today? Yes, Sansa whispered, trembling. He was gallant? The Hound finished. He was mocking her, she realized. No one could withstand him, she managed to laugh, proud of herself. It was no lie. Sandor Clegane stopped suddenly in the middle of a dark and empty field. She had no choice but to stop beside him. Some septa trained you well. You're like one of those birds from the summer isles, aren't you? A pretty little talking bird, repeating all the pretty little words they taught you to recite. A little bird who might be a skin changer.
Yes. It's nice to know where the little bird comes from instead of him just starting to say it.
Remembering that this is it. Yeah, this is what we're referencing every time.
The origin of little bird right here.
Yep. No, I mean, she's proud of herself because this is what she does, right? She figures out the right, proper thing to say in the circumstances. And she's already shown us when she met, Renly and Barristan that she's really good at this, right?
Yes.
She
would make a good queen. I'm not gonna lie.
Oh yeah. And she's sort of meant as an echo of Catelyn, especially at the beginning, right? So I certainly understand where some of the fandom dislike of her comes from, but I do think that she's being set up as this incredible growth story, just like Jaime and Theon, that are pretty nasty characters to start with room to become really great.
Well, I mean, they're older characters, so they shouldn't have started where they did. And Sansa is 11, and where she's going to end up is a bigger arc than the older people, I think.
Yeah, more of a story about growth anyway, yeah.
Right.
The right side of his face was gaunt, with sharp cheekbones and a gray eye beneath a heavy brow. His nose was large and hooked, his hair thin, dark. He wore it long and brushed it sideways because no hair grew on the other side of that face. The left side of his face was a ruin. His ear had been burned away. There was nothing left but a hole. His eye was still good, but all around it was a twisted mass of scar, slick black flesh, hard as leather, pocked with craters and fissured by deep cracks that gleamed red and wet when he moved. Down by his jaw, you could see a hint of bone where the flesh had been seared away. Sansa began to cry. He let go of her then and snuffed out the torch in the dirt. So craters are probably moon symbolism, and red and wet cracks sound like the weirwood face. We've sort of discussed how red faces pretty much have to be weirwood faces, and certainly cracks sound like carving, so that really fits well. So the symbolism. So this symbolism could tie the moon to the weirwoods, and you see a whole lot of like trees scraping against the sky, scraping against the face, right? I don't so much think that this is a story of one moon being destroyed as much as it is a scratch across the moon that sent out meteors. That's the impression I get.
Right. But even in this description of his face, slick black flesh and then gleam, I get some of that the ice armor, the black armor that John pictures himself in the dream, and then Danny seeing the Robert's army on the other side with their gleaming black armor or something like that. I mean, for some reason, that armor pops in my head when I'm reading this whole section.
Yeah, and the idea that you're seeing his skull kind of implies an image of death, and maybe that goes with his resurrection and the undead symbolism as well, too, right?
Right. Well, seeing bone, you also get that blood raven. Some of it's a little bit of bone with Sander, but it's a lot of bone with blood raven.
Yeah, that makes sense. Notice that he snuffs out the torch when she cries, so he's trying to spare her the pain of seeing his face. He knows he's frightened her, and he's trying to show pity by snuffing out that torch, I think.
Right. Well, he's also helping himself because I go ahead and tell you, he's in love with this girl. As bad as we are with Jorah and Danny, I mean, as far as I can tell, the Hound, this is the most beautiful thing he has ever seen.
Yeah. I actually wonder if at the end of the story he's going to be her sworn sword, and it won't be explicitly stated, but there's so many stories where it's questionable whether the sworn sword was actually the biological father of the children, and maybe she'll be married but not necessarily in love with her husband.
We've seen that quite a bit in this story, especially from a guard.
Yeah, and she probably winds up with Tyrion, but you could see maybe Sweet Robin or something. I don't know who would be the loveless husband of her. I mean, she's already married to Tyrion, so maybe she just winds up staying married to Tyrion.
Yeah.
She's supposed to be an echo of Catelyn. He's supposed to be an echo of Ned. So it kind of would make sense if that's really where it winds up. But.
Yeah.
A voice from the night, a shadow. So the others are shadows from the night. So this is more other symbolism, right?
Right. It's the second time.
Yep. Or is it only a second? I think it might be the third or fourth.
Well, I mean, just talking about the shadow part of it.
Yeah. He squatted silently before her, a hulking black shape shrouded in the night, hidden from her eyes. Sansa could hear his ragged breathing. She was sad for him, she realized. Somehow, the fear had gone away. Somehow? Thanks, Brian, for the quantum leap. The silence went on and on, so long that she began to grow afraid once more. But she was afraid for him now, not for herself. She found his massive shoulder with her hand. He was no true knight, she whispered to him. The Hound threw back his head and roared. Sansa stumbled back away from him, but he caught her arm. No, he growled at her. No, little bird, he was no true knight. So you've got a roar and a growl, which make the Beauty and the Beast reference just that much more blatant.
Was it Alicia Patience that did the fairy tale and symbolism?
Yeah, right.
And she had the Hound as the huntsman and Sansa as Snow White, or something like that. I can't remember it right off the top of my head, but it's still pretty good symbolism. But
she did Snow White as Jon Snow. I remember that.
Yeah.
Which made some sense. Of course, he's also Jack Frost. But anyway, if you ever tell Joffrey Your sister, your father, any of them. I won't, Sansa whispered. I promise. It was not enough. If you ever tell anyone, he finished, I'll kill you. So he's not going to kill her, but could she spill this?
Don't tell Sansa.
Don't tell Sansa. So I do have to wonder, right? So
Yeah.
so we know that this would have been really good advice for Show John.
Oh yeah,
Book John's
definitely.
advice would have been really good for Show John, and
Yep.
I was joking that it would have been good for Ned, but it seems like maybe it would have been good advice for Sandor.
Yes. Well, I mean, you see a lot of repeat in the story. At least anything good at least happens 3 different times to the 3 different
Yeah,
people.
I do actually think that if she does tell, it's probably gonna be something that like saves him. Like she might speak up for him when somebody doesn't trust him or something. And so,
Right.
so if she ever does spill this, it would probably be for his benefit. And like I said, I don't have any fear of him following through on this threat.
No.
Did you,
I think at the end of this story, which we already see bits of it through the story, the Hound is going to be what most people would consider a true knight. I mean, that's got to be
Yeah.
where his arc is headed.
Yeah.
I mean, you see fingers of it here and there of his honor. I mean, he's without a doubt one of the the best arcs, not the top arc, but just the best arc to read. Him and Jamie in the hot bath scene with Brienne. I mean, their stories, for me, they're the most fun to read, to see the changing along the way.
Yeah. Well, Jamie's he's consciously decided, you know what? I could be a good guy.
Right.
I'm going to be good. Right. And he makes a conscious decision. I can be good. My story can be a story of me becoming the good guy. And so I'm going to do that. Right. Just decides that he can the rest of his life, he can use to tell his own story as I am the good guy. And, I don't think that involves murdering his ex.
Well, I mean, you see the transformation of the swordman, the cocky swordman, to okay, now I got to think, what would Tyrion do? And he ends up he would really make a very good hand of the king. I mean, he's a lot smarter than he thinks he is. So I mean, him and the Hound. I mean, Arya. They're some of my favorite story arcs. Just anytime I get to a chapter, just got them in it, I perk up. They're awesome. They're really good reads.
Yeah, I like her chapters, even if she starts off a bit naive.
The one thing I found odd in this chapter was Littlefinger's heavy cloak with a fur collar. Just when you got Robert talking about how hot it is there.
Yeah, still summer.
Yeah. I mean, it I don't know. Is he colder than other people? Is something like that? I don't know. It's just
that is strange.
It just hit me as weird, but
maybe it's just that he's showing off his wealth, and it's the wealthiest thing he could wear.
Yeah.
There's an old Peanuts cartoon where somebody says something to Snoopy about his heavy coat in the summer or something, his fur coat in the summer, and he says, some of us prefer to sacrifice comfort for style.
That would have been me younger. Now, I'm in shorts all the time. I wear a cowboy hat. I don't care about style.
Sounds good.
I cannot wait till Monday. I'll go ahead and tell you.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this next one. I was just telling old new dude that I'm starting to think that maybe Marcella's going to get a dragon.
Man, this reread is just like one of the best things. I mean, it when you get to the 6th reread and you go to granted, with my memory, I still hit stuff where I don't like what's going to happen next kind of feeling, but you don't get that anymore. So it takes a lot of the excitement out of the story. But doing the rereads with you here on this, it just, the energy level I have for the reread is almost as high as the first time I read the books.
Yeah, and I really like going through it and looking for interesting things to point out. It's
Right.
fun to
Looking for key
as much.
phrases. Yeah, I mean, there's little things that I didn't look at before. Just anytime, it's like I was thinking about the other day, the Red Viper and the Mountain when they fight. You got the Oberon repeating himself over and over again about what the Mountain did, and anytime in the story we see a repeating phrase or a repeating action, I always think of Hidden Fingers, and I mean, I don't know if the mistake of standing so close to the mountain and removing the spear, it was a choice. It was one of those quantum leap moments that
It could be.
Right. Was he being messed? So every time we go through here, I look for things that I never looked forward for. So, I mean, it's just fun now.
Oh yeah.
Sorry. I get off topic and I can't shut up. So,
well, and you actually you tweeted out that you wanted to talk about House of the Dragon.
yeah, I cannot wait. I mean, dude, oh, I'm glad you said that. I haven't read Fire and Blood. Everybody that knows me knows I have. I got it right here behind me, but I haven't read it. And when I saw that trailer, I got goosebumps right now all over my arms just thinking about House of the Dragon. And I told somebody, look, I'm more of a dire wolf kind of guy, but as soon as I saw that, I mean, I peed myself a little bit. It was so great. I mean, I cannot wait. I cannot wait to hear the excitement from David Lightbringer after seeing the premiere. I don't want to know anything, but I cannot wait I'm more anxious for House of the Dragon than I ever was for Game of Thrones on HBO. I mean, I still get goosebumps.
I'm one of the things that we were discussing was shoot, I forget the name. It's something like we'll talk about next time. I have it in my notes for next time, but there's a maybe I can pull it up real quick. There's a Reddit post by Hysterical Function. That's what it is. Hysterical Function made a Reddit post talking about how the next male in the line of succession after Tommen that isn't actively rebelling against the Iron Throne is Doran Martell, and Doran Martell would probably name his heir as Arianne, despite the fact that he would only become king by skipping Myrcella. And the logic that skips Myrcella would put Trystane and Myrcella on the throne. So you're setting up something that looks a lot like a second dance if Tommen dies.
Yes.
And they pick Doran as the successor under the specific rules that led to the House of the Dragon, right? The skipping of the female. You would create a situation that would be almost identical, where you would have the king want his oldest female to be heir, and so theoretically, the logical person then to oppose Aegon and Arianne would be Trystane and Myrcella. So it'd be kind of interesting if that means that Myrcella is actually the one who winds up becoming a dragon rider, which would then reveal the whole twincest as being bastards of Ares, right? So that would be kind of an interesting way to sort of tie everything together, make it all resemble, make the Dance 2 resemble Dance 1. So anyway, so that's what I was referring to. And House of the Dragon.
We said it right before we started filming or going live today. And I mean, it's a little light bulb in the back of my head. I mean, I don't know anything about Fire and Blood, but like I said, if it's anything good in this story, it tends to repeat. So, yeah, I mean, at least 3 times. So I'd like to see what the third time or the one before the Dance of the Dragon.
Well, we've been told that that there's going to be a second dance. Well, what if the second dance really does look like the first dance, right? What if it looks like skipping the female in the line of succession, going to the male, then naming the female, the oldest female, as heir, and then having that dispute, right? It's an interesting concept. I had never thought of it before, but Hysterical Function mentioned, Doran is the next male in line, and I was like, huh. And he has the exact scenario.
talking about happening in threes, was the first time the Bloodstone Emperor, uh, oh, with his what was it, his sister, the Amethyst Princess or whatever, Amethyst Queen. Isn't that another ruler taking
Yeah, and you could argue in a sense Maegor is the descendant of the oldest of the Targaryens, right? And so
Right.
if you argue that well Visenya shouldn't have been passed over, she should have been queen, and therefore her descendants should come before. You could make the argument that Maegor is actually doing what by stealing the throne, he's actually kind of putting things right in a way, right? Because he's the descendant of the oldest of the three siblings, right? And so you could argue that that's sort of another parallel right there. And I mean, any succession crisis in a sense is somewhat similar to these.
You get a little Blackfire imagery and mirroring through the story.
Well, yeah, Blackfire is almost exactly the same as Stannis, which is why it's funny that Stannis considers them traitors.
When you wrote that down in the email, man, I busted out laughing. I mean, I'm not as big a Stannis fan as a lot of the other people are. The whole Shadow Baby killing his brother.
He is a great commander. He's a great battle commander. It's just he's deliberately set up to do everything that Aerys does. He orders executions of innocent nobles, which is meant to parallel the execution of Ned and Robert command order. With Sunglass, right? He says, "I burned his brother," right? So he says, "I'm the one that gave the order. I burned his brother and the sons of Hubbard." Right. He definitely burns his own hand, right? Which is one of the things Aerys did. He definitely has a noble expecting to fight a champion, and instead he takes his fire sorcerer advisor and says, "Use your magic to kill this person," right? Which is exactly what Aerys does. So it's the three big crimes that Aerys commits that show that he's mad. Stannis does all three.
Right. So, yep, I'm not a big Stannis fan. Man, that's 51 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh, we're going for a record.
Let's not. Let's cut it short because I don't want to. I don't want to be cat. I don't want to be
we haven't
cat
talked
too.
all week. We haven't talked all week, so we tried to get it all in one little live stream. But all right, Eddard is the next chapter. We will be doing it Monday. I have internet now, so yay!
Sounds good.
Yep, I have been Old New Dude. He has been
Richard York, Asher's Trueborn son.
Y'all have a good weekend, and we'll see y'all Monday. Take it easy.
Have a good one.
Bye.